welcome back to my channel. My name is Eliza, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this hat that the Sonny angel is wearing. Basically, I was very inspired by this Sonny angel figurine that I have. This is from the Flower series, if you were wondering. I got this. It's a blind box toy. It has the most adorable little hat on. I absolutely loved that it had the stem and the base of the flower at the crown of the head. So this is the inspiration for this tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make my version of that, which is this. It's basically this. I have another one right here. This is the one I knit in the video. What I have decided that this is it's basically a soft sculpture of a flower. You can plop it on your head like this. You could attach it to a hat or balaclava that you already own. I've also included some links in the description for free knitting and crochet patterns for a couple cute hats and balaclavas that I think would look adorable with this plopped on top. I've also written a full pattern for this flower head topper, which also includes instructions for how to make a double knit leafy tie. I will be attaching this to mine just underneath it and then tying it in a bow around my head. And then the written pattern also has instructions for making an I-cord and attaching it to the inside of the hat. Very simple stuff that you can definitely figure out on your own, but I would recommend just like plopping it on your head or wearing it on top of a hat or balaclava that you already own. This is, I would say, an ambitious beginner or intermediate knitting project. All of the resources to learn how to make this are online, and I wish I could include all of the steps and how to do everything in this video, but it would just be the longest video ever. So I unfortunately am just going to show you how to knit this and basically the steps that you need to take to knit this row by row. It's exactly the same as purchasing the pattern from me, it's just in video format. The pattern is $5, and that's literally just because it's a document that I made. It has a tiny bit more information about the bows and stuff, but they're very similar. So I will be walking you through how I made this. It is a fully finished flower. When I designed this, I wanted the leaves to be very structured, so I did knit the front and then I knit backs for them and closed them up like little pockets. You don't have to knit the back. I do show you in the video, but it's totally optional if you want to knit the back. Sometimes the reverse stockinette purl side just looks like it needs to be stockinette to me. So I did knit both sides, totally optional, and you can definitely skip over those throughout the video. I've included links in the description below for basic knitting knowledge that you need to have to knit this. How to knit, how to purl, how to do a decrease, how to do an increase. The increase that I use in this video is the backwards loop. Make one backwards loop method, and I've linked everything down below. So visit those links if you're unsure what any of the abbreviations mean. It is just kind of a soft flower that sits on the top of your head, so there really isn't a size. But I will put my gauge if you want to match approximately what this looks like. You basically knit from the stem down. We'll build the leaves first and then go into the petals, so you can try it on as you go to see how it's fitting your head, and you can always add more petals if you need more volume. For this project, you'll need yarn, you'll need 6mm needles if you want to knit exactly what I knit. You could definitely try to knit this on any size needles, but I do recommend circular needles because that's how I knit it, or very long double points. You could probably make it work at double points. You'll also need 5 stitch markers because I do have you put stitch markers all around this to build the leaves. I think that's all the information that you need for this project. Like I said before, we're going to start with the stem and the leaves and then go into the petals. I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible. I did have about 2 hours worth of footage, so I'm going to introduce everything a little bit slowly and then try to edit it as fast as possible so we can get as much of the tutorial into the video in a short amount of time as we can. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I can't wait to see what you make! Using 6mm knitting needles and your stem color, cast on 3 stitches. Turn your work and prepare to work an I-cord. Knit the 3 stitches. Slide the stitches to the other side of your needles. With the working yarn at your left side, knit the 3 stitches. Doing this will create a tube which will act as our stem. Slide the stitches to the other side of your needles and knit the 3 stitches again. Slide the stitches to the other side of your needles. We will now work an increase row where we increase to 5 stitches. Knit the first stitch and then make 1, knit 1, make 1, knit 1, and then slide the stitches to the other side of your needle. Knit the 5 stitches. Slide the stitches to the other side of your needles and knit the 5 stitches again. Slide the stitches to the other side of your needles. We will now increase to 8 stitches. Knit the first stitch, make 1, knit 1, make 1, knit 1, make 1, and then knit the last 2 stitches. We will now prepare to work in the round. We're going to turn our work and slide to the middle of your needles, and then divide the stitches in half. So we have 8 stitches, so I'll divide them in half and make 4 on each side. And then we have our working yarn on the top needle, so we're going to slide our needle into the lower stitches, like so. Half on the back, half on the front. Working yarn is on the back needle. You'll use your back needle to knit in the round. And you can place a marker here if you're worried about losing the beginning of the round, but usually it's pretty easy to tell where the beginning of the round was when you split it in half with your needles. I'll put a beginning of round marker on just in case. And we're just going to knit the stitches. So slip your needle in to knit, grab the working yarn from the back, and knit those 4 stitches. I've knit the 4, now I'm going to turn my work, pull that back needle out, and slide the other needle into the 4 stitches we haven't worked yet. My yarn got into my needle, but it's fine, it'll come out on its own. Make sure your yarn is on top as if to knit, and then knit the next 4 stitches. Turn your work over, and there we have it. We are now working in the round. On the next round, we're going to increase to 12 stitches. So prepare to work the next side. We're now at the beginning of the round. So the first stitch is a knit stitch. The next one, we're going to make 1. Now we're going to knit 2. Make 1. Now we're going to knit 2, 1. My second stitch is on the back, so I need to move my needles around. So that was a knit 1. I'm knitting my second one. Going to make 1. Now I'm going to knit 2, make 1, knit 1. Now we have 12 stitches on our needles. Like before, we will turn and continue working in the round. And now we will knit all 12 stitches. After knitting all 12 stitches, we are now going to place markers to begin the growth of our leaves. You'll need 5 markers for this portion. Position your work to continue working in the round. We will now place our markers, so knit the first 2 stitches. 1, 2. Place a marker. Knit the next 2 stitches. Place a marker. Knit the next 2 stitches. Place a marker. Turn to the other side. Knit the next 2 stitches. Place a marker. Knit 2 stitches. Place a marker. And then knit the last 2 stitches, and you can place a marker here for your beginning of round, or just note where the beginning of round is. We're going to increase. To do the increases for this round, we're going to knit to the marker, make 1, slip the marker, and repeat. Knit to the first marker, 2 stitches, make 1, slip the marker, knit to the next marker, make 1, slip the marker, knit to the next marker, make 1, slip the marker, my marker's on my needle over here, knit to the marker, make 1, slip the marker, knit to the marker, make 1, slip the marker, and knit to the end of the round, or the marker, last 2 stitches, make 1 after the last 2 stitches. We just increased to 18 stitches. The next round, we will just knit all of these stitches. We will now repeat those 2 rows 5 more times. Your piece should look something like this now. This is what we're going to build our leaves off of. So now we will start working these sections, and we'll be working these flat. This portion of the pattern is done in 20 rows, so we're going to knit rows 1 through 20 together, and then you'll repeat rows 1 through 20 for the remaining 5 petals. So you can write the rows down, or you can just keep track of where we're starting and play the video back to this part for each leaf if you need to. To do the first one, I'm just going to pull out a little slack so it's easier to work with. And we are knitting flat, so we'll knit our first row as usual, and then we will turn and purl instead of working in the round. So I'm starting right where the tail is, where your beginning of round marker was, or where you've deemed the beginning of the round is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to knit the first stitch here, and then we're going to knit the next 2. So we're knitting the first 3, and then we will make 1. So we're increasing 1 stitch, put on a stitch marker, and then knit 2, 1, 2, and then put on another stitch marker. And after that stitch marker, we will make 1 stitch and knit the last 3. And now we are at this stitch marker, and this is going to be another leaf, so we're going to turn here. You can leave this marker on here if you want. I'm just going to take it off because it's pretty obvious where the stitches we're working are now, and I often just like find these little markers that aren't doing anything a little annoying. So now we're going to turn the work, and we're going to purl these stitches, and for a clean edge you'll want to slip the first stitch purl-wise like that, and then just purl the rest. So when you slip the first stitches, it just makes the edges look really nice and clean, and you don't get those bumps on the side. And then turn your work. Now we're on row 3, and for row 1 I did knit the first stitch, and that was really just to get the yarn from the other side of the round onto this side. Now I'm going to slip the first stitch so I get a nice clean edge. So for row 3 I'm going to slip the first stitch, and then I'm going to knit to the marker. So that's 1, 2, 3 more. And at the marker I'm going to make 1, slip my marker, knit the 2 stitches in between the markers, slip the marker, make one, and then knit the rest of the stitches. Row 4 and all of the purl side rows are going to be the same, where you'll just be purling the stitches. You won't be doing anything to them. I am going to slip my first stitch purl-wise for the clean edge and then purl across. Turn your work again, and row 5 is going to be the same routine. We're going to slip the first stitch for a clean edge. We're going to knit to the marker, make one, slip the marker, knit the 2 stitches in between the markers, slip the marker, make one, and knit the rest of the stitches. Row 6, repeat the steps for your purl row. I'm slipping the first stitch and purling across. For the next row, we're not going to do any increases. We're sticking with our 14 stitches, just knit across. Row 8 is our usual purl row. Moving on to row 9, this is where we're starting our decreases. The first stitch will slip for the clean edge, and then the next 2 stitches we're going to do a slip, slip, knit. So slip both of them knitwise and knit them together, and then just knit to the last 3 stitches on your needles. And then we will knit these 2 together, knit those 2 together, and knit the last stitch. So we just decreased 2 stitches. You should have 12 stitches, and then just turn your work and purl back. Row 11, this is another decrease row. We're pretty much decreasing in all of the remaining rows to form the shape of our leaf. Row 11, we will slip the first stitch, do a slip, slip, knit for the next 2 stitches to decrease to 1. And then we will just knit the next 2 stitches to the marker, remove your marker, and knit the 2 center stitches together. Remove the next marker, and then knit to the last 3 stitches. Knit 2 together here, and knit the last stitch. Turn your work and just purl those back stitches. For row 13, we'll slip the first stitch, do a slip, slip, knit, decrease for the next 2 stitches, and then knit to the last 3 stitches, K2 together, and knit the last stitch. And then turn your work and purl those stitches. Row 15, slip the first stitch, do a slip, slip, knit for the next 2 stitches, knit the next stitch, knit the next 2 stitches together, and then knit the last stitch. So you have 5 stitches now. Turn your work and purl those 5 stitches. What I do to decrease here and keep the clean edge, as you can see the edges are pretty clean, I want to decrease to 3 stitches, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease 1 stitch on my knit row and then another stitch on my purl row. So here I'm going to slip the first 2 stitches knitwise. So like what I've been doing on the first stitch of every row, slipping it knitwise and then purling over it when I do my purl row. So what I'm going to do here is I have these 2 stitches. I'm going to slip my needle into them both as if to knit and slip them off together. And then I'm going to knit the next stitch and knit the last 2 stitches together. So really what I've done is I've only decreased 1 stitch because I still have these 2 stitches here. They're just kind of slipped together. So then you'll turn your work, and I'm going to slip the first stitch for a clean edge, purl the center stitch, and then I have my 2 slip stitches here, and I'm going to purl them together. Turn your work, and now we will knit those 3 stitches together. So just slip your needle in all 3 of them as if to knit, bring your yarn around, and knit them together. It can be a little bit tight, but just try to get your yarn through. And then I am going to turn my work one more time and just purl that 1 stitch. And now I will cut my yarn, loosen that up a little bit, slip my leaf off my needle and just pull the end through to make a knot. And there you have it, that's your first leaf. So you're going to repeat those rows, row 1 through 20 that I just went over, for the remaining 5 leaves. So the leaves are the sections in between your stitch markers of 8 stitches. And I will see you when we have our 6 leaves. Alright, your stem should look like this. I already woven all the ends because they were kind of all over the place, and I think it's easier to continue on with the next step with all of the ends woven in. The one on the top is probably fine, but we are going to work around these petals here. So I'm going to continue using my green color because the next section is going to be the same size as these. They're just going to be in between them. To start, you'll need the same amount of stitch markers as before, and what we're going to start with is picking up stitches. This is the inside here, and I'm going to pick up stitches starting at the center of the leaves. We're going to start just under the separation of the leaves here. Look at where the separation is and kind of run your needle across to find the center point. So I'm going to start right here, and we're going to pick up the same amount that we were working with before when we made our leaves. So we're going to pick up 48 stitches, and we're going to place a stitch marker every 8 stitches and then join to work in the round. So we've already done all of these techniques. The only thing we're doing differently is we're picking up stitches and we're going to start working a new section. So it can be a little tricky to pick up stitches sometimes. What I'm going to start with is just putting my needle up inside that stitch and slipping my yarn over that, and then trying to scoop it up through that stitch. So I have 1 stitch on my needle now. And with this, you want to have those 8 stitches that you're picking up sit in between the middle of one leaf and the next leaf. So there'll be 8 stitches between the leaves. And if it's hard to pick up stitches with this needle, you can use your other needle to help you. So I'm going to pick up another one using my other needle. So I'll just slip that needle under, and then I'll take my working needle and stick it under as well, as if to knit. And then basically knit it off that other needle. So I have 2 stitches now. And you do kind of have to look and figure out where you're picking up stitches to make sure they're in the right place. You can put stitch markers if that helps you too. But I'm just going to try to eyeball it. So I know I want 4 stitches up to this point, and then 4 to the center of the next leaf. And it's okay if they're not in the exact same place on both sides, because we're going to do a lot more work on this project, and this is just the very top of that, and I don't think people are going to be examining your stitches very thoroughly. So don't worry if it's not totally even, just make sure you have the correct number of stitches. So I have 4, and I'm going to continue to the center of the next leaf. So now I have my first 8 stitches, and I'm going to continue picking up stitches all the way around the circle, but I'm going to place a marker after those 8. I will see you when I have my full 48 stitches and I'm ready to join in the round. Alright, your work should look something like this. You have all of your stitches picked up on the inside around your leaves. What we're going to do next is we want to knit all of these stitches, but we want them to be in the same direction as the ones we already made. And right now, if we were to knit in the round, it would be the opposite. We would have our knit stitches on the same side as these purl stitches. So we're going to do something a little funny here. What we're going to do is we're going to pick up an extra stitch with our right needle, and I've placed this stitch marker here just so I know where the beginning of the round is. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up another stitch, and it can be from a loop you already picked up a stitch from. It doesn't really matter. Just pick up 1 extra stitch, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my work over, and I really want to knit going that direction, but I need this stitch to be over here, so my working yarn is on my right needle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my needles real close, and this method is basically an invisible join for working in the round. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slip this stitch over to my right needle, and then I'm going to take the stitch that was already on there and pass it over And by doing that, I've moved my working yarn to the opposite needle, and I can start knitting in the direction that I want, so my knit stitches will be on the right side. So I'm just going to put my beginning of round marker there. I'm going to pull this needle out so I can do magic loop. Put my working yarn behind my needle, and I'm just going to knit for 3 rounds. After the 3 rows, your work should look like this. Should have a couple rows to see there. And from here we're going to move on to working flat, and it's going to be really similar to what we did for the first section of leaves, but we're going to be working in between them up to the stitch markers we've already placed. So I'll show you how to do the first leaf, and then you can do the rest on your own. It's going to be the same as the first section of leaves where each leaf is done the exact same way. So I'll give you the instructions for the first one now. This one has a couple more rows than the last one. This one will do a repeat of 24 rows. For the first one, we're just going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I made it to my stitch markers, so now I'm just going to remove that because I don't really need it there anymore. And we're going to turn our work and purl back. And I am going to do the slipping of the first stitch starting on the second row just for the clean edges. So I slipped to the first stitch and now I'm purling across those 8 stitches. Okay, I'm back to my beginning of round marker. I think I can remove it now because it's easy to tell where we are. Turn your work, and then row 3, we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to knit the stitches, and I am going to slip my first stitch now, knit across, turn your work and purl. For row 5, slip the first stitch for a clean edge, and then I'm going to knit the next 2. After that, I'm going to make 1, place my stitch marker, knit 2, place another stitch marker, make 1 after the stitch marker, and then knit the last 3. So we just increased to 10 stitches. And now we will turn our work and purl across. For the next row, we're going to increase again. I'm going to slip my first stitch and then knit to the marker. Once I'm at the marker, I'm going to make 1, slip the marker, knit the 2 in the middle, slip the second marker, make 1, and knit to the end. Now I'm going to turn and purl. Alright, turn, and we're going to do the same thing for this knit row. We're going to slip the first one and knit to the marker, make 1, slip the marker, knit 2, slip the marker, make 1, and knit to the end. Turn and purl across. The next row we're not going to increase, we're just going to knit across our 14 stitches. Turn and purl. Now we're going to start decreasing. So your leaf should look like this. For the first decrease row, I'm going to slip the first stitch, and then I'm going to do a decrease on the next 2. So a slip, slip, knit, decrease. And then I'm just going to knit across, going all the way to the end, skipping my stitch markers until I get to the last 3 stitches on my needles, and then I'm going to knit those first 2 together and knit the last one. And then row 14, I'm just going to purl across all of those stitches. For the next decrease row, I'm going to slip my first stitch, make a decrease with the next 2 stitches, slip, slip, knit, and knit the next 2 stitches and remove my marker. And then I'm going to knit the 2 stitches that were in between the markers together, remove the second marker, and knit to the last 3 stitches. I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches together and knit the last stitch. And then we'll turn and purl across. For the next row, we will slip the first stitch, make our slip, slip, knit decrease on the next 2 stitches, and knit to the last 3 stitches. And then at the last 3, you'll knit the first 2 there together and knit the last one. And then turn and purl across. And then for the next decrease row, we'll do the same thing. Slip the first stitch, slip, slip, knit the next 2 stitches together, and knit to the last 3, which is really just knitting 1 more stitch, and then knitting the next 2 stitches together, and knitting the last stitch. And then you'll turn and purl across those 5 stitches. And here we'll do that funny thing we did on the last section of leaves where we're going to slip the first 2 stitches together knitwise. So put your needle through starting with the second one, put your needle through it knitwise and get that other one in there too, so it looks like that. And then just slip them off. And then we will knit the center stitch and knit the last 2 stitches together. And then purling, I'm going to slip my first purl stitch, work the center purl stitch, and then purl those 2 slip stitches together. And now with the last 3 stitches, I'm just going to knit them all together. So K3 together. And just hold on tight so you don't have any slip off the needles. Okay, and then turn it and purl that last stitch. Now you have your 1 stitch left. Cut your yarn and pull the end through the loop. And there you have it. Okay, and that's what your piece should be looking like now. You should have a new leaf in between the leaves you already worked. So turn your work back over, slide your needles in, and you'll do the exact same steps for the remaining 5 leaves. And I'll see you once that's done. Your stem should look like this now. And you can stop and block this if you want your leaves to be flatter, or you can keep going and block it later. And now we're going to start with our petals. So for my petals, I'm using this orange color. And we're going to start by picking up stitches in a really similar way to how we picked up for the second round of leaves. Get all your stitch markers together. So you'll start with your work like this. What we're going to do is we're going to turn it and pick up stitches with the work facing us. So we end up with the purls on the back side and our knits in the same direction as the leaves. And as you can see on my sample, I already picked up stitches and did it incorrectly, and now I'm going to show you how to do it correctly. For this portion, we want our stitch markers to be in the center of the leaves, just knit, so right here and here, going all the way around the work. And we're going to pick up 48 stitches. So I'll start in the middle of one of the leaves, pick up a stitch, and we're going to have 8 stitches in between the 2 leaves. So that's 1, 2, I'm going to use my other needle to help me a little bit, 3, right below where the leaves split is where we're going to pick up stitches. And try not to get too close because these may be a little bit more open than some of the other stitches. So just try to grab onto a sturdy bar there. So I've got my first 8 stitches down, and I'm going to place a stitch marker after the 8th stitch and continue going around until I reach the beginning. Now that we have all of our stitches on our needles, should look like this. Hard to tell what's going on, but just make sure your stitch markers are in between the leaves. And now we're going to start our first section of repeats. So I'm going to place my marker to work in the round. And for the first section, we're going to be increasing. Knit the first stitch, and then you'll make 1, knit to 1 stitch before the stitch marker, make 1, and knit the last stitch before the stitch marker. Okay, now you'll slip that marker and do the exact same thing for the next section. And the first row can always be a little bit tight, so just move your work as needed. So knit the first stitch after the stitch marker, make 1, knit to 1 stitch before the marker, and with 1 stitch remaining, you will make 1, knit that last stitch, and slip the stitch marker. So just keep doing that until you reach the beginning of the round. Back at the beginning of the round, so you should have 10 stitches in between all of your stitch markers now. And for the next round, we're just going to knit all of the stitches, no increases. So now you should have 10 stitches between all of your markers and 1 row of just knitting. So we're going to repeat those 2 rows until you have 16 stitches between your markers. And after you do the row where you increase to 16 total, you'll do 1 more row of just knit stitches, and then we will continue on and start making our petals. So repeat the 2 rows until you have 16 stitches between your markers, and then do 1 more knit row, and I'll see you after that. After completing those rounds, your work should look like this. And now we're going to work our individual petals over those 16 stitches. To start, I'm going to knit the first stitch, make 1, knit to the stitch just before the stitch marker, 1 stitch left, make 1, knit the last stitch, you can remove that marker, we'll turn our work and purl back over those stitches. And now I'm just going to repeat those 2 rows until I have 22 stitches here. Now that you have 22 stitches, we're just going to work 2 rows of stockinette. So the first row is just knitting those 22 stitches, and then we'll turn our work over and purl back. No increases. Now we're going to start decreasing. First thing we're going to do is slip our stitch here, and then we're going to make a decrease of slip, slip, knit, and then we'll knit 5 stitches. After those 5 stitches, we'll do another decrease of slip, slip, knit, and then we're going to place a stitch marker after that decrease. The next 2 stitches are knit stitches, and then we'll place another marker. Now we'll do a decrease of K2 together, so knit 2 stitches together after that marker, and then we're going to knit 5 stitches, and with 3 remaining, we'll knit the next 2 together, and knit the last one. Then you'll turn your work and purl back. Next row, slip the first stitch, slip, slip, knit, and decrease the next 2 stitches, and then we'll knit 3 stitches, do a slip, slip, knit, decrease right before the marker, knit the next 2, and after the marker, do a K2 together decrease, knit the next 3 stitches, and the last 3 stitches we'll do a K2 together decrease, and then knit the last stitch, turn and purl back. Next row, we're going to slip the first stitch, make a slip, slip, knit, decrease, knit 1 stitch, make a slip, slip, knit, decrease before the stitch marker, slip the marker, K2, slip the marker, do a K2 together decrease, knit 1, do another K2 together decrease, and knit the last stitch, turn your work and purl those 10 stitches. For the next one, we will slip the first stitch, knit the next stitch, do a slip, slip, knit, decrease before the stitch marker, remove your stitch marker and knit the 2 center stitches together, remove the next stitch marker, K the next 2 stitches together, and then knit the last 2. Turn your work and purl. For the next row, we're going to slip the first stitch, and then slip, slip, knit, knit the next stitch, do a K2 together for the next 2 stitches, and then knit the last stitch. Turn your work and purl over those 5 stitches. Here we'll do that funny thing where we slip the 2 stitches together off our needle, knit the center stitch, and then knit the last 2 stitches together. Turn your work, purl, purl that center stitch, and then purl the last 2 stitches together. And with these 3 stitches, we will knit them together. Turn your work, purl that single stitch, cut your yarn, and pull it through to bind off. Mine is looking a lot like a carrot right now, but as you can see, we have 1 petal that's larger than our leaves. From here, repeat those steps for the stitches in between each stitch marker until you have all 6 petals done. From here, your work should look like this with all of your petals made. They are going to be a little bit pointy, but as you can see, they do flatten out quite nicely. For the next step, I am going to knit the back side of these, Currently the petals all have the reverse stockinette showing, and once this is on your head and these are moving up, you would see that reverse stockinette. For my personal preference, I don't mind it on the leaves because they're pretty small, and when you block them they get quite flat. But for the petals, I wanted them to be stockinette on both sides. So this is optional if you don't care about the reverse stockinette. You don't have to do this part, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to knit the opposite side of these to make them into almost little pockets that you could then stuff, or you could put a wire in them if you want to kind of make a shape for them. But if you're okay with this as it is, just weave your ends and skip ahead to the next portion of petals, which if you're just skipping around in the video will be the next color that I use. For this portion, knitting the opposite side of the petals, we're going to do very similar steps to what we already did to make these petals. I'm going to use the same color, but you can use a different color. This is kind of the inside, so you could use a lighter color or a contrasting color. With the materials that I have, I'm just going to use the same orange. For this, we're going to pick up stitches in the same place, so you can literally just pick up these contrast purl bumps here all the way around, and just make sure you're placing your markers every 8 stitches in the same places you did for the last petals. And they're really easy to tell where that is because you have your increases here. So I'm going to do that and place all my stitch markers, and then we will get started knitting. Your work should look like this now, where you have knit stitches here and the back of your knit stitches is lined up with the back of these petals. So the first round we're going to do is an increase round. These steps are really similar to the steps that we did with the first section of petals. They're actually almost exactly the same. The first row is an increase row, so it's exactly the same as what we did for the first round of petals. We're increasing here, so the first stitch will be a knit stitch, and then we will make one. Knit to 1 stitch before the marker, make 1, and knit that last stitch. So you'll do that around the entire round until you get to your beginning of round marker, increasing 2 stitches for every single one. And then the row after this will be a knit row. And then we will repeat these 2 rows until we have 16 stitches between all of our stitch markers. Your work should look like this, matching up to the petals you already worked. Now we're going to work these petals individually. And the first thing we want to do is increase from 16 to 22 per petal, just like we did for the first petals. The only thing different here is we want to attach this to the back petal. So I'll show you how I do that. And this is just what I've figured out works the best for me. If you have something else that will work for you, you can definitely do that. You can also knit the petals individually and join them by seaming with a tapestry needle or with a crochet hook. But I'm going to do it this way and just kind of work it together as I go. So I'm going to hold them as flat as possible to one another. And then the way I'm going to join is I'm going to just push my stitches to the end so I can get in real close and try to look and see where the loops are lining up. So we have 2 right here, and I'm just going to stick my left needle into this first loop here on the opposite petal. And then I'm going to take my right needle and I'm going to put it behind the loop from the opposite petal and the first loop from the petal we're knitting up right now. So there's 2 stitches there on my needle, and I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to knit them together. And now, since we're increasing to 22 stitches, I am going to make one and knit to the end. Okay, I have 1 stitch left, so I'm going to make one. And now we have to join on the opposite side. So I'm just going to line them up, and I think I'm going to go for this bottom loop here. Let's see. You kind of have to pull on the petals to really see where they line up. I think I'm going to go for this loop here on the opposite petal. It's right at the beginning. And so what I've been doing for this section is I've been slipping the last stitch on my left needle to my right needle. And I'm going to remove this just because I don't want it to fall off. and then I go back to the opposite petal and to the stitch that I've decided I want to knit into, which is this one. I'm just going to stick my needle in there, and then I'm going to take my left needle and I'm going to put it in that same stitch and take it off, and then take the stitch that still needs to be worked off. And now I'm going to take my right needle and put it through the back of both of those stitches and knit them together and off the needle. So it may not really look like your work is attached yet, but as you go, it will definitely start to come together. So keep doing that as you go on the knit side. On the purl side, you'll just purl across, no joining. Okay, I have 22 stitches here now, and I'm slowly starting to see my sides come together. The next 2 rows are just going to be stockinette, so the first one will just be knitting those 22 stitches and joining the sides, and then we'll turn and purl back, and then after that we'll start our decreases. So just knit and then purl. Closing up, and it's getting thicker. You can keep going like this as we do our decreases. If you want, you can stuff the petals if you want them to be a little thicker. You could also put wires in here, like a piece of wire on either side if you want to be able to bend and shape your petals. You can do that at the end too, and there will also be tiny spaces between the petals. I just left mine doubled and found that that was thick enough for kind of floppy, but not too floppy petals. We're going to start the decreases now, so the first thing we're going to do is join the sides with our first stitch. The next stitch is going to be a slip slip knit, so the next 2 stitches, slip slip and then knit them together, and then we're going to knit 5, and we'll do another slip slip knit on the next 2 stitches. Place a stitch marker. If this sounds familiar, it's because it's basically exactly what we did for the previous side of petals. And then we're going to knit 2, place a stitch marker, knit the next 2 together, knit 5, and then knit 2 together, and then the last stitch you'll just knit it to the opposite petal. Now I'm going to turn and purl. For the next row we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to knit the first stitch with the stitch on the opposite petal to join. We're going to do a decrease, slip, slip, knit, and then we're going to knit 3, do another decrease, slip, slip, knit, slip your marker, knit the 2 center stitches, slip the next marker, knit the next 2 stitches together, and then knit 3, knit the next 2 stitches together, and then join the last stitch with the opposite side. And then turn and purl across. Turn your work. Next one is very similar once again. We're going to join sides with the first stitch, and then slip, slip, knit. And then you'll knit 1 stitch, and then slip, slip, knit again. And then you'll slip your marker, knit the 2 center stitches, slip your marker again, knit the next 2 stitches together, knit 1, knit the next 2 stitches together, and then knit the last stitch with the side. Turn and purl those stitches and turn your work. For this row we'll do the same thing, join the sides with the first stitch, and then the next stitch is a K1. After that we'll decrease the next 2 before the marker in a slip slip knit, and then I'm going to remove my marker and knit the 2 center stitches together. Remove the next marker and knit the next 2 stitches together, knit 1, and then join that last stitch with the opposite side. So we have 7 stitches now, and we're going to turn and purl those 7 stitches. Next row, and if you are getting close to the top, just try to make it work. If you're running out of stitches, you can literally like keep joining onto the same loops if you need to, like for multiple rows, and eventually once you're totally joined, they'll kind of work themselves out. The first thing I'm going to do is join the sides, and then I'm going to slip, slip, knit the next 2 stitches, knit 1, knit the next 2 together, and join the last one with the opposite petal. Okay, now you have 5 stitches. Turn and purl those 5 stitches. This is where things get a little bit different. Not complicated, just different. So the first thing we're going to do is join with the opposite side. So first stitch with the opposite side, knit those two together. And then we still need to do our decrease. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stitch that I just knit and I'm going to put it back on my left needle. And then, funny enough, I'm going to slip it off again, knitwise, slip the next one off knitwise, and I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit, decrease, and knit those two together. So now I have one stitch, knit the center stitch, and then the last 2 stitches I'm going to knit those two together. And that's the stitch that I just knit together, but I still need to join it with the opposite side, so I'm just going to take that stitch on my right needle, slip my right needle into the opposite side stitch, and knit those two together. Three stitches. And then you're going to turn and purl those 3 stitches, turn again, and we're so close. This is literally the last step. So what I'm going to do here is similar to what I just did. I'm going to knit the first stitch with the first stitch on the opposite petal to join together. And you should be right up at the top of that back petal now. And then you'll knit those together to join. And then you're going to put that stitch back on your left needle. And then we're going to take these 3 stitches and we're going to knit them together. So stick your needle through all of them as if to knit, and knit them all together. And then with this stitch here, we're going to pick up the last stitch on the opposite petal. It's looking a little bit funny right now because we just knit everything together, but I'm just going to pick up this loop here and knit it together with the 3 I just knit, so with this stitch. Oop, mine slipped off, but that's okay, I just need to pass it over. And now I have 1 stitch remaining. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cast this off. There's my loop, and I'm going to cut the yarn and just slip it through the loop as if to cast off and tie a knot. So now, since I didn't weave the ends on my petals on the back, I have 2 ends here, and you can either tie them in a knot, or you can weave them into each other to just kind of hide the ends, because we don't want to see the ends anyway. But there's your petal, and it's nice and chunky now, and you can kind of flatten it out. You can also shape it so it goes up or down, which is kind of nice. Take a look at it with, mine's looking very pumpkin or carrot right now, but I'm going to do some yellow petals, so hoping that'll make it look more like a flower. So repeat those rows for the remaining 5 petals. For the next portion, we're going to start our leaves in the next color, the petals in the next color. We're going to pick up stitches the exact same way we picked up stitches for the orange leaves, in my case, petals. What we're going to do here, and this should be easy at this point, is we're going to pick up stitches around the hexagon shape, and you want to pick up 96 stitches total and place your markers every 16 stitches. And for this, we want our stitches to fall in between these two, so your new stitch will be in the middle and you can see it when it lays flat. So it'll be right here. So to do that, you want your stitch markers to be in the middle of these petals. And since you want 16 stitches each, and here we increase to 22, you should be able to pick up 16 right at the join, but I would suggest doing it maybe 1 or 2 rows below that, just so you're not directly at the join, maybe 1 row below. So pick up 96 stitches total, place your markers in the middle of the petals, and then we will join to work in the round. Okay, your work should look like this now. you have 96 stitches and your stitch markers should be placed every 16 stitches. From here, we'll work the first round, which is an increase round. So for the first round, we will knit 1, make 1, knit to the first stitch before the marker, make 1, knit 1, slip the marker, and then repeat until you reach the beginning of the round. And for round 2, we'll just knit all of those stitches. Continue working rounds 1 and 2 until you have 18 stitches between your stitch markers, and then end with a knit round. Now we're going to start working flat across the 18 stitches we just increased to. Row 1, we're going to knit 1, make 1, knit to the last stitch, make 1, and then knit 1. And then you'll turn your work and purl across those 20 stitches. And repeat these 2 rows until you have 24 stitches total. For the next row, we're just going to knit all 24 stitches, and then we'll turn our work and purl the same 24 stitches. And we're going to repeat rows 3 and 4 2 more times, so these petals end up a little bit longer than the ones we knit before. For row 5, we're going to start decreasing. So the first stitch we're going to knit, and then we'll do a slip, slip, knit, decrease, knit 6, slip, slip, knit, decrease, and then we're going to place a marker, knit 2, place another marker, knit the next 2 stitches together, knit 6, at the last 3, we'll knit 2 together and then knit the last stitch. And then turn your work and you should have 20 stitches, so purl across those 20 stitches. For row 7, we're going to knit 1, slip, slip, knit, knit 4, slip, slip, knit, slip your marker, knit 2, slip the marker, knit 2 together, knit the next 4, and then knit 2 together and knit the last stitch. Turn your work and purl across those 16 stitches. Row 9, we're going to knit 1, slip, slip, knit, knit 2, slip, slip, knit, slip the marker, knit 2, slip the marker, knit 2 together, knit 2, knit 2 together, and then knit the last stitch. And now we'll turn our work and purl across those 12 stitches. For row 11, we're going to knit 1, do a slip, slip, knit, and then do another slip, slip, knit. Now we'll slip the marker, knit 2, slip the next marker, work a K2 together, and then another K2 together, and knit the last stitch. Turn your work and purl across those 8 stitches. For row 13, we'll knit 1, slip, slip, knit, remove your marker, knit 2 together, remove the next marker, knit 2 together, and knit the last stitch. Turn your work and purl across those 5 stitches. For row 15, we'll start with a slip, slip, knit, knit the next stitch, and then knit the last 2 stitches together. Turn your work and purl across those 3 stitches. For row 17, we're going to knit the 3 stitches together, leaving us with 1 stitch, and then we're just going to cut the yarn and bind off that 1 stitch. And you'll repeat these rows for the additional 5 petals. If you would like to knit the opposite side of these petals, you can repeat the same steps to knit this last section, and just remember to join the sides with the back petal as you go. You should have something that looks like this, I hope. This is the hat that I made in this video. I ended up adding a couple extra petals to the bottom, this one and also this one. My project also ended up being a couple different colors because I didn't have enough yarn to make all the petals the same color, basically. When I went back and doubled the second layer of petals, I had to use pink on my yellow petal. So that's why this looks kind of funny. I ended up adding 2 additional petals. And if you would like to add additional petals like this to your project, you can go back and follow the same steps for the petals, but just start at the portion of the pattern where we're knitting flat, not in the round, and just pick up however many stitches you need. You could follow like the exact pattern measurements and just make another petal. I knit this one like very close. I literally just put it in between these 2 petals here. There's a little hole, and just knit it on because I needed some more coverage on the side. I added these petals to the side. I just wanted like something covering my ears. And I think I'll probably wear this one with a balaclava. I made this little balaclava, and then I would plop this right on top. These little petals look kind of funny, but I'm hoping they'll look better when I stitch them down. So then it would look like this. And I'm just gonna stitch this on to the balaclava using the same yarn that I used to knit this and a tapestry needle. I'll show you the other version that I have. I included instructions for the other option in the written pattern, but basically what I did was I made a double knit strip. This is just 12 stitches, double knit, and then I made a leaf shape at the end. This is the other one with a little bow. So if you want to just knit your flower in the video and make a cord to attach it to your head, you could do a little double knit band like this. These are just some random funny leaf shapes that I tried to make. They're very similar to the petals that we made in this video. If this seems too complicated, you could just also make an eye cord, because this hat kind of has a head shape under it. So like for me at least, it's kind of just resting on the crown of my head. So unless I'm like jumping up and down, I think it'll stay on for the most part. So mess around, maybe put it on a hat, a balaclava, make some ties. The world is your oyster, and I hope this pattern worked out for you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I will see you in my next video.